Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Talks. Today we have Drew Manning with us. I'm really excited for this episode. Drew is a New York Times best-selling author of the book Fit2Fat2Fit. He's best known for the experiment that went viral online. He's been featured on shows like Dr. Oz, Good Morning America, and The View. And he has his own TV show as well, a hit TV show, which was also called Fit2Fat2Fit. I'm most excited by the fact that you're going through this experiment again, going into your 40s. From what I'm following online, which I think you're on week 15 this week, or 16, and you're starting in January with losing the weight. I don't want to give too much away. It's super exciting to have you on before that challenge starts. Tell the people where they might know you from and what you do.
Yeah, so most people probably know me from my brand, which is called Fit2Fat2Fit, which is something I did back in 2011. So I was a personal trainer, right? I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and we all played sports. So growing up, I played American football and wrestling. So I was very active and very fit naturally because of that. And when I became a personal trainer in 2009, here I was, someone who had never been overweight a day in my life, trying to help people who were overweight the majority of their life. And you can imagine the disconnect between the way I thought it should be. And for them, they thought, for them it was really hard, but for me it was really simple. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't simple for them. I'm like, you just, follow the meal plans, you do the workouts, you put down the junk food. Like, how hard could it actually be? Until one of my clients told me, Drew, I don't think you understand how hard it is for me or for people like me, because for you it's always been easy. And so I took that to heart, and I was thinking of ideas like, okay, how can I gain a better understanding? And then boom, this thought entered my mind, and then almost felt like a calling to me. It was like, okay, what if I decided to get fat on purpose? It sounds crazy, right? But what if I did that on purpose and documented the whole thing? Would that give me a better understanding? And it did. And it was one of the hardest, most humbling experiences I've ever experienced, and it taught me just how wrong I was in trying to help people lose weight, because my perception was based off of my experience. And so it was really humbling. And so what happened was, for 6 months I let myself go completely. I put on 75 pounds of pure fat during that experience, and wrote my book and was on YouTube and showing people about how humbling this experience was. And the biggest lesson I learned from all of it was empathy, first of all, for those that struggle. Because, had I not gone through that experience, I don't think I ever would have fully understood what it's like to be overweight for the first time in my life. And so, to make a long story short, luckily I lost the weight, wrote my book. The book turned into a TV show. And, here I am today doing it a second time, about a decade later. But with the hope of bringing more empathy to the fitness industry.
Why do you think it was necessary? What was the disconnect? What did you learn out of the experience when you were, with the mindset you had before towards the mindset after towards clients?
Yeah, I would say the biggest disconnect was, I used to focus so much on the physical aspect of weight loss, right? Calories, macros, workouts, supplements. Those types of things are super important when it comes to losing weight, but that's not the only thing that people struggle with. People struggle with the mental and emotional side. So the biggest lesson I took away from my Fit2Fat2Fit experiment was how much of transformation is mental and emotional. I could give someone the best meal plans, I could give someone the best workouts, the best supplements. None of that matters if they can't overcome the mental and emotional challenges that they've struggled with, pretty much their entire life. And so those were the biggest lessons I took away from that first experiment. And it really opened up my eyes, like I said, to just how wrong I was. But I could have so much more empathy now for those that struggle with body transformation, for those that struggle with weight loss. Because what I learned from that first experiment was also how powerful the emotional connection to food really is. If you've never been addicted to food, it's hard to empathize with someone, because I used to be the judgmental person before. Like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like, put down the junk food, stop drinking soda. It's not that hard. Like, you just stop eating it and you go to the gym. And in my mind, I'm like, it's so simple. Why can't people figure this out? Until I did my experiment and I experienced it firsthand, how powerful not only the emotional connection to food is, but the biological and physiological challenges that come with eating these highly processed foods that we have here in America.
So, how did you kick off this addiction? I mean, I wouldn't, well, I guess I'm experiencing something similar, and for me, it's almost really, it feels like I need to have it.
Yeah.
And I compare it to how I was when I was younger. If I would eat bad food and then I would have training, I did martial arts. So then I would go into my training, I'd throw up. So that's why I wouldn't eat bad food. But then I stopped I stopped training, and then suddenly I was drawn towards the food. So how do you cut that cord towards the emotional connection that you have towards the food? How did you do it? And obviously you maintained it for, you said it's been a decade since that last experiment. So how did you maintain that, especially after you did that experiment?
So overcoming addiction is a really, really hard thing to do for so many people. And one of the things I've learned about addiction over the years is some people ask, why the addiction? Instead of asking yourself, why does this person have this addiction? Ask, why the pain? Almost behind every addiction is some type of pain that someone has experienced, whether it's trauma, abuse, emotional challenges, sometimes that stem from childhood. And to just say, okay, stop doing it, doesn't work for the majority of people. The key to overcoming any addiction is self-awareness. And what I mean by that is learning who you are and learning what your triggers are. And in those moments of reaction where you're triggered by something, whether it's stress or finances or life in general, we get triggered, and let's say someone is an emotional eater, they have a stressful day at work, they got into a fight with their spouse, and they reach for the chocolate, or they reach for the wine, or they reach for whatever drug, whatever substance people use to distract themselves and numb themselves. It's in those moments of reaction, learning how to become the observer of your thoughts. And what I mean by that is, in those moments, you can take a step back from what your body and mind is almost autopilot making you do. You can take a step back and observe, like a movie, what's happening in front of you. And in those moments, when you become the observer, you can then thoughtfully respond. It's almost like pushing pause. And you can now thoughtfully respond instead of being on autopilot all the time, and make a higher decision. It's not something that's simple that you just do in your head. This took me years of learning how to meditate. I would highly, highly recommend meditation for anyone out there looking to overcome an addiction. You need a support group as well, a community of people to help you see your situation through a new perspective. And those are the things that you have to do constantly, like working out day after day after day, to build up that observer, in those moments, so that you can then more thoughtfully respond instead of just reacting.
So then, if you're saying two things, the support group and the meditation, which I kind of also expected to pop up. A lot of people, when they go on this journey, it's hard to find a support group, and especially if you're struggling with losing weight, you're also going to struggle with maintaining the habit of meditation. How do you recommend to start? What type of meditation do you do? How did you start your meditation journey? And then similar question towards the whole support group. How do you find people, and how do you maybe filter for people that would be really good in the support group and wouldn't stop after 2 months?
Yeah, really good question. So let's start with meditation. So for me, I grew up in a very religious household, and so prayer was all we did, and we learned nothing about meditation. And so it was 33, 34 years old is when I started to learn about meditation. And it's so amazing with technology nowadays. You can download a free app. I downloaded Headspace and Calm and did these free guided meditations because I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, do I sit there and think about nothing? How does meditation work? And if you never experienced it, nowadays there's all kinds of free apps, free YouTube videos, and just type in guided meditation and someone will guide you through exactly what to do. And that's a great place to start. And I promise you, if you put effort into it, just like you put effort into diet and exercise, you will get results out of it. And so for me, that was the first step. Lots of free apps out there. YouTube is amazing as well. The second thing is the support group. For me, it came kind of easy because here I was on all these TV shows, Jay Leno, Dr. Oz, Good Morning America, So people were already naturally following me on social media. And then when I flipped the switch and had to lose the weight, people were doing that with me. So that accountability, that support group kind of came naturally. For your average person out there that doesn't want to start a blog or a website or social media, start with your immediate inner circle. So your immediate family, your spouse, your kids, your siblings, your friends, whoever's in your inner circle, reach out to them to see who is willing to, one, do this journey with you, but also two, give you a balance of empathy and letting you know that you're worth it to keep fighting, but then also kick in the butt every once in a while. We all need that support. We all need that support group of people and community coming together to help us and remind us that we're worth it to keep fighting. But then also like, hey, you can do hard things. You can push through this hard thing. And so that's what I would recommend. You don't need to go to online to find a support group. You can. The cool thing with social media nowadays, Facebook, Instagram, there's groups now, Facebook pages that you can go to that you can be like, okay, I want to do keto, for example. Hey, here's a keto support group. Hey, I have questions about this. Can someone help me? Boom, you'll get like people from all over the world answering your question and giving you the answers you need and the support that you need. So it's available if you're looking for it. If you try and do it by yourself, that's the hard part. That's where you're like, okay, no one's holding me accountable. No one's really pushing me to do this. And so anyways, those are the two things that helped me that I highly recommend for people to get started with meditation and support groups.
Are there certain people that you think maybe like a certain filter you should have on of these are good people to have in your support group? Or is it in the beginning just anybody who's your immediate family or friends, have them in that support group?
Good question. Sorry, go ahead. You can finish.
Yeah, so how important is it and what do you look exactly for? Because obviously I've had the experience that you might start with somebody, but then, a couple of weeks later or like a couple of months later, you guys like have completely different interests or it gets too busy and suddenly like both of you don't want to do anything. So what are you exactly looking for in a person?
Yeah, this is where it's really hard because some people like to think it's their best friend or it's their brother or it's their spouse. Sometimes that person is the one who's trying to sabotage, like, oh, come on, let's go to the movies instead of going to the gym. Or like, hey, come on, we worked really hard this week. Let's go get some ice cream. Like, you're more fun when we eat, unhealthy food. Like you're, those kinds of people maybe at first might look like your support group. The person you want to have alongside with you is someone that loves you enough to, if this is your path and this is your truth and this is your journey, they will keep you accountable. They will push you in those moments of, giving you a kick in the butt every once in a while when you need that, but also love and empathy and letting you know that you're worth it to keep fighting. Like, hey, there needs to be a balance of that. It can't just be like a militant, approach to like, waking you up every morning at 5 a.m. and like pushing you and yelling at you and screaming at you. That might work for some people. The majority of people need a little bit of love and empathy every once in a while, but empathy without boundaries is enabling. So it's really important to have that balance of empathy, love, self-worth, but also, hey, you can do hard things, get up, let's do this together. Someone that's going to be there for you every step of the way, that's not going to sabotage you. But they need to have that balance of also showing some love and empathy along the journey.
I want to go back before we continue into like the whole technicality of it. I want to go back to like before you had, the dream of like, hey, I need to do this journey, and you started going on all these TV shows. I saw when we were obviously going through your history, you started as a financial analyst or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So you had a completely different beginning. Could you tell us more about like how you started and why you ended up in this personal training, and then when you got to personal training, why you ended up going with this crazy experiment?
Yeah, really good question. A lot of people ask this or know this about me. So yes, I went to college, got my degree in business, and was a financial analyst for Chrysler right out of the gate. I had a job set up before I even graduated from college, and it was a nice cushy job working for the auto industry here in the U.S. And then boom, 2008, 2009 happened, right? And we all know what happened. The U.S. Auto industry totally tanked and went bankrupt, and so laid off a ton of people. That was one of those people. I was living in Chicago at the time, And my wife at the time, her family was from Utah. So I was like, hey, I left, like, I got, let go from my job. The Midwest is kind of not the best market for jobs. Maybe Utah has a little bit better economy. Your family lives out there. Let's move out there. So we decided to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. And I figured I would be able to find a job pretty quickly with my resume. But in those times, in 2008, 2009, the market was so competitive. So many people laid off. I got so many interviews, but I never got a job offer. And so I was like, man, what am I going to do? So for 8 months, I couldn't find a job. I was like, all right, let me come back to the basics. What am I passionate about? Am I passionate about finance? No, it pays the bills. What am I passionate about? And I'm like, I've always been into health and fitness. Like I said, I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters. I played football and I've always worked out, my whole life. I was like, maybe I should become a personal trainer. So I did the path of a personal trainer, got certified, started taking on clients through Craigslist. I think I was charging like $25 an hour. Super cheap, right? Super cheap, super affordable, did it on the side. And then what's weird is I got a job offer through a connection I had in the medical field. So I went from finance to the medical field, still personal training part-time. And then it was then when I was taking on clients that the Fit2Fat2Fit idea happened. And then I honestly had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a marketing degree. I didn't have, a budget to make this big. I didn't have any media connections. It's not like I knew Dr. Oz or Jay Leno. I just winged it, and friends and family were following. And then boom, before you know it, kind of went viral after a month or two. And
how did it go viral? Like, what was happening that suddenly, like, you did this one thing and it went viral, or was it a culmination of a lot of things that you were doing?
It was a little bit of both. So it was a combination of a few things, like me reaching out to, producers of local TV networks, here in Utah, or like radio shows here in Utah. And then I think I did like a free press release, thing that, I don't know if those ever work, but I got a few hits back. And before you know it, I was on a couple like fitness podcasts, not huge ones. And then a couple fitness bloggers started blogging about me. And I remember one of those blogs got picked up by Yahoo Shine, which is a subsidiary of Yahoo.com, and it did really well on that site on Yahoo Shine. And then Yahoo.com saw it and said, "Hey, we want to put this on Yahoo.com, the front page." And I was like, "Sure, yeah, let's do it." And so the next morning they did. Boom! I got phone calls from every TV show, every producer. Friends from high school that I hadn't heard from in 10 years were like, "Oh my gosh, I saw you on Yahoo." And they were sending me screenshots, and like everyone was calling me. People were calling my parents, trying to book me for these shows. And that's when, and my website crashed too, by the way. I was like, "Oh man, I don't know what to do." And so it was really crazy times. But a lot of it was luck, but a lot of it was me just being persistent, like, hey, reaching out to people. Because if I just sat there and waited for people to come to me, it doesn't always happen that way.
I mean, it seems like you had a great idea, and then you kind of pushed it locally, and then that local small fire started getting became like bigger, and then suddenly Yahoo picked it up. Now, Yahoo, we're talking 10 years ago. This is happening around 2009, I'm assuming?
2011,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, that makes much more sense. Would you say that Yahoo is still important, or like?
I don't think I've ever been to Yahoo.com. I can't remember last time I went to Yahoo.com, but I don't know. Is it still up? I have no idea.
No, I think it's still up. They still have the old Yahoo answers. I think Quora took over, but it's fine.
Okay.
But so okay, that seems pretty clear. And then obviously you got it. You got the idea from the client. Do you feel have learned from your experience as well? And if so, what do they usually learn from your experience?
Really good question. Yes, they have learned. I don't think every personal trainer needs to do this. I will say it is valuable. It is really hard, and it is a very valuable experiment for someone that's never been overweight to step outside of their shoes into someone else's shoes to gain some empathy, develop some empathy. There are other ways to do that. I know some trainers, like my good friend Chris Powell, who had the TV show Extreme Weight Loss for 5 years on ABC. He's one of my good buddies. He's one of the most empathetic people I've ever known, and he's never been overweight or let himself go to experience that. I think some people are naturally born with empathy in their veins, Some people maybe can develop it through other ways by maybe having a sibling or a really close friend or someone that they love that is overweight. But I think most trainers, when they follow me, they see what I post, they read my content, they read my books, they've seen the TV shows, they see what this type of journey does to them. And if that is the spark that makes them dive into empathy and how to develop more empathy, like maybe reading Brene Brown's books. Brene Brown's books I would highly recommend to any personal trainer out there to learn how to develop empathy and then apply that in the fitness world. It is possible to do that without doing what I've done, but I have had people from the TV show do this journey, and you see every single one of them humbled, more empathetic, and a better understanding on the mental and emotional side of transformation than they ever would have had, if compared to, like, let's say if they didn't do it. So I think for some people it's amazing. They should do it, but obviously it's very dangerous. It's risky. It's not healthy. There's other ways to develop empathy outside of that.
That's a really good spot that you hit there, because I have questions about you actually going on that journey. Did you set yourself some guidelines when you went on that journey? For instance, I'm allowed to eat this, but not that when I'm getting fat, or you said 6 months. Is it 6 months really you can do whatever you want, or is it force feeding? Like, what are you exactly doing to gain so much weight? How are you controlling yourself to not get super sick, for instance? Or I can imagine heart attacks could be a problem.
Really good question. So, in the beginning, I'll be honest, I was kind of winging it. I didn't really have a format or structure other than this. I wanted to focus on standard American processed foods. So things that we grew up with in the 70s and 80s that are, highly processed, super cheap and affordable, right? Cheaper than real food. They taste amazing. I'm not going to lie. This food is designed to be hyper palatable. It tastes amazing, and it's very addictive, but then also very convenient. Here in America, we love convenience products. We don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen cooking, prepping the food. It's like, hey, microwave dish, or add some milk to it, or just eat it right out of the box. Like, that's what Americans love. And so instead of focusing on fast food like Morgan Spurlock did in Super Size Me, we've all seen that. Most people know fast food is not healthy. We still eat it, but we know it's unhealthy. This kind of food is marketed to us as sometimes healthy food because it's like, oh, low fat, all natural, fortified with vitamin A, vitamin D, organic, like there's all
like
these
the Burger King burgers, fully like organic hamburgers or something.
Yeah, so it's like people are like, oh, well, this is healthy for me. And so some of these foods that I'm talking about are things like white bread, white pasta, juices, granola bars, sugary cereals, sugary sodas, chips, cookies, crackers, things like Hot Pockets, SpaghettiOs, mac and cheese, top ramen, all these foods that we have here that are super cheap. And I promise you, 80% of America eats these foods because they're convenient, they taste amazing, and they're super cheap. And so that was the format. I did have a doctor monitor me on that first journey. I do have a doctor monitoring me on this journey that I'm currently doing. And this time around, I'm doing 4 months instead of 6 months like I did the first time. But then other than that, though, that was the structure, the format. So no exercise as well. It's not like I'm lifting weights to bulk up some muscle as I'm gaining fat like some bodybuilders do.
So you stopped working out completely for 6 months as well?
0 exercise.
So what is a doctor tracking exactly?
All kinds of things. My lipids, my hormones, testosterone, my thyroid. Let's see, my hemoglobin A1C. So that's like my glucose levels for the past 90 days. Things like my CRP, C-reactive protein, which measures inflammation. All my normal lipids, my testosterone and estrogen, and all kinds of like vitamin D levels. I'm also tracking my sleep through my Whoop app that I use, this device right here. Let's see, tracking my macros, my calories through my FitnessPal. And it's kind of scary and amazing all at the same time. It's a little science experiment that people can track all this data.
On a daily basis, you pretty much ditched all supplements, all healthy foods, and all workouts, correct?
Yes, very true.
So 2 questions. Why did you go from 6 months to 4 months now?
Because that was the format of the TV show. So 6 months was good, but it was really long, and it's hard for people to follow along for that period of time. So 6 months is a long period of time for someone to invest into watching every YouTube video, every episode. every post. 4 months is short enough to where it's like it's not too long, but also it's enough to show some results. Because if I just did it for 1 month and gained 20 pounds, that's not really noticeable to your average person. So I'm around 60 pounds. I'll probably gain around 60 pounds in these 4 months versus 75 pounds in 6 months last time. So that was the format of the TV show as well.
So then the second question, obviously you're eating like a child at home alone, no parents, going crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, you have children, you have a job, your own business, which is, I can imagine, even more stressful. Partially why a lot of entrepreneurs eat healthy is to cope with all the stresses. But you, on purpose, started kind of ruining that foundation. How did you get affected all over the board, not only physically, well, actually also physically? Like, because you were getting inflammation, so I'm assuming everything hurts, you're sleeping worse. How are you coping mentally? What's happening with you as you're getting fatter?
So this is the interesting thing that I'm trying to make people more aware of, and this is why I decided to do it again a second time, was because nowadays social media is so much more involved. Like, there's so many different platforms, there's live streaming, there's stories, there's all kinds of things that I couldn't show on the first journey that people can see every single day. So they check in every single day. They see my posts, they see my stories, they see my lives, they see what's happening to me physically, mentally, emotionally. So obviously my body is gaining a lot of weight, but on top of that, my hormones are changing, and that affects my sleep. And when my sleep is affected, that also affects my hormones continually changing, which, if you've ever experienced that, you're not the best version of yourself. And this is why a lot of entrepreneurs in this space, they think, oh, if I just sacrifice my sleep and don't care about my body for a little bit, I will make the money that I'm seeking to make. But then you sacrifice your health to make that wealth, and before you know it, your health has gone downhill really bad, and then you have to use that wealth to regain your health eventually. And so for me, I'm trying to make people more aware of just how much of like your physical health affects your mental, emotional, spiritual, financial health in so many ways, more than you think. And so a lot of the changes I'm noticing are, I wake up obviously very sleep deprived because I'm not sleeping efficiently like I used to. So I need tons of caffeine, tons of stimulants in the morning to keep me going, to give me a little bit of mental clarity throughout the day. But then I'm eating lots of highly processed foods that spike my blood sugar levels. And when you get a spike in blood sugar levels, you also get a crash later on, and you need more to get another spike because your body gets addicted to that high that it gets from the spike because it feels good temporarily. I'm not going to lie. But then constantly doing that throughout the day, you get sleepy, you get exhausted. So my mental fatigue and physical fatigue is legit real after like a big heavy lunch with lots of carbohydrates. I feel like I need to take a nap. So when you feel sleepy and tired and exhausted, even with tons of coffee, you're not the best version of yourself when you're doing a podcast, when you're doing a live, when you're writing a blog post, when you're whatever work needs to get done, or even just being a dad. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm in survival mode. And anyone that has kids that has had a newborn baby has kind of felt this before, maybe experienced it. When a newborn baby is born and isn't sleeping through the night, you're up every couple hours, you're exhausted, you're in survival mode. So your ability to handle stress from work, from employees, from your boss, from your spouse, from whatever it is, you're in survival mode, which means, hey, this situation is too stressful. What's the quickest way to diffuse it? And, isn't the most effective or efficient way, but it's like, whatever I got to do to get this stress out of my life, because I'm already so stressed over so many other things. It's scary and it's hard, and it affects relationships, affects, like I said, you as a parent, affects you as a business owner, more than you think, more than you can imagine. It affects your sex life. It affects your mental capabilities, your creativity levels. And this is the connection I'm trying to make to people, is like, hey, when you eat unhealthy food and don't exercise, it affects your sleep, but it affects you so much more in so many other ways than you can ever imagine. This is why taking care of our physical health carries over into, you showing up the best version of yourself in all these other areas of your life.
What can you share specific-wise about your sleep? So how many hours more are you sleeping? Or obviously, because you have your trackers on, I can imagine you're sleeping more. Are you sleeping the same? How many hours were you sleeping before? How many hours are you sleeping now? Are you taking more naps? What does your day look like with sleeping?
So it's all about quality over quantity. My quantity is about the same. I'm sleeping about between 7 to 8.5 hours a night. But one of the measurements I use is called HRV, heart rate variability. And the higher, the better. So mine used to be, before I started this journey, around 100, which is really good recovery, which means my body is sleeping efficiently during the night. And I wake up rested, recovered, ready for another day to push myself. Now it's dropped to the 30s or 40s, which means I'm sleeping the same quantity, but the quality of sleep has gone downhill. So I'm waking up, like I said, sleep deprived, even though I've been in bed for 8 hours. I'm not sleeping as efficiently. So when I wake up, it feels like I've only slept for 3 or 4 hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I have to try and go throughout the day and be a dad, make my kids breakfast, and then, all right, got to do a podcast, got to film this, got to write this, got to, interview this person or whatever it is. It carries over, man. And so that's the thing. And then when your sleep is affected, your hormones are affected. So now I'm more emotional because my testosterone has dropped, my estrogen has gone up, and my hormones are out of whack. And then your drive, your motivation to do things isn't what it used to be. So if I had motivation to, before to, get a ton of work done or, whatever it is, the motivation has dropped. And then your libido is totally gone, right? Your sex drive, which if you don't have a good sex life, your quality of life goes down. And so it carries over into so many other things. And that's why I'm trying to make people, more aware of that.
So then you explain the motivation to do more as maybe when you were eating bad food, your testosterone would drop, your estrogen would go up. So you said you would feel more emotional and lose the motivation to do more, like when you were healthy, or?
Yeah, so I work with a doctor. She's a hormone doctor, and she focuses on sexual health and anti-aging. And one of the things she warned me about, because we did a little podcast with her before I started my journey, she's like, hey, your testosterone is going to drop. And I knew it was. I know it's going to drop, but I wanted to make the audience aware of that. And when you have low testosterone, here's the symptoms, low motivation to do anything, low drive to do anything. So when you have a lower libido, lower sex drive, you also have lower motivation to, show up and work or be creative or whatever it is. There's other things that it affects. So when you have low testosterone, it carries over into, your motivation to, show up and be the best version of yourself.
So when you are on the path of recovery, what do you do to recuperate those testosterone levels?
Yeah, good question. So it's a combination of a lot of things. Well, obviously, sleep is by far the most important thing you can do. Second, I would say would be stress management. So I'll be implementing things like meditation, a gratitude list, journaling, getting out in nature, getting some sunlight first thing in the morning, whether you live in Utah, which is freezing cold, any kind of sunlight will still help and be beneficial. Taking cold showers, which raises testosterone levels. I'll be using an infrared sauna and red light therapy, which, not everyone has access to, but it's not like those things are miracle things, but also eating high quality foods with, high quality fats and proteins are very essential for testosterone production. So it'd be interesting for people to see what I do, and they can join me on the journey back to fit and see exactly what I do and do that same program with me. And then as I test my testosterone throughout the next 4 months after I lose the weight, people can see my progress of my testosterone starting to increase because I'm taking care of those important things like sleep, stress management, nutrition, exercise, all that stuff.
So that's actually a question I wanted to ask you. What's different now? You knew things were going to go bad mentally. So how did you prep yourself for going into the second one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So right now, I'm not doing anything to prep myself, honestly, because part of this experiment is to, completely let myself go. So I know that my mental, the mental aspect of this is going to be way hard. So there is a week of preparation that I call my mental preparation week, where I will be doing these little tiny hacks. Like I said, the cold shower, going for a walk every day, making my bed, journaling, gratitude list, meditation, positive affirmations. These types of small things, these things aren't going to give me a six-pack, but these things will give me a mental six-pack so that my mind is strong, so that when it comes to the physical stuff later on, when I start doing the hard exercises, the mental game is already strong so that I know I can do hard things. So if I can do these little hard things, like take a cold shower, which in the wintertime sucks, for sure. But I promise you, if you can do these little small things that are hard for some people, then that will carry over into doing bigger hard things like eating healthy and exercising. And that's the biggest difference in my approach to health and fitness, is helping people on working in and not just working out.
But do you think that going into these 4 months, you maybe outsourced more, delegated more, prepped more? I can imagine you feeling quite, actually, and I don't have to imagine, I know that on your last week's podcast, you were quite frustrated as well. It's affecting, obviously, your content being put out. Haven't you, prepped a team around you to get through the 4 months a bit better?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I have a team that's, created the app, the website. I'm doing the content still, but they're helping refine some of that and make sure it's, on par with, our brand and the quality. So yeah, I do have a team that helps me with that, because there's a lot of work that goes into it, because there's going to be tens of thousands of people from all over the world that are going to be joining me on January 4th to do this journey back to fit. So it has to be organized. It has to be professional. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. But still, when it comes down to it, people will be doing the same journey I'm going to be doing. And guess what? They have their busy life too, that they have stuff that they have to do as well. So I have to make it relatable and doable for your average person. I'm not going to be working out 6 hours a day. I'm not going to be meal prepping and having my meals prepared for me by a chef. I'm going to have to do that myself. But we're all going to be doing these hard things together. And that's what makes it so powerful. And so, I am a little bit nervous, to be honest with you, of how much mental fortitude it's going to take and discipline it's going to take, because I know how hard the journey is going to be. But when you start from where I'm starting, which is no exercise for 4 months, which is basically, no endurance, no strength anymore, I know how hard it's going to be to flip the switch and go back up that mountain, where I was on top pretty much for the past 10 years. And now to come down off that mountain and start all over again is like, it's going to be exhausting. It's going to be hard, to do that whole journey back up again.
As you get older, do you think it gets better mentally or worse mentally?
That's a good question. It depends on your life situation. I think the older I've gotten, the more stress I've had in my life. Being 40, my kids are older, different position in my life. I was married back the first time I did it. And this time around, I'm divorced. There's a lot of different stressors in my life. So I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like I have more tools at my disposal, but I feel like there's a lot more stress in my life. So I think it will be harder. My hormones are different. My metabolism is different. My energy levels might not be the same, but I still know it's possible. And that's why I'm going to do it with people. I'm going to actually walk the walk and do it with people, instead of just being this personal trainer that's been in shape his whole life that has no idea what it's like to be overweight. And it looks so easy for them because that's how they've always been,
I mean, on average, you're a personal trainer, so you have like all kinds of people. Well, at this point, you're obviously like much more, but back then when you were a personal trainer, one-on-one with people, you saw people from all walks of life. Do you think that the mental fortitude that you'd see, that it depends on how you grew up, or do you think that as you have more life experience, you'll gain more mental fortitude, or you'll be more exhausted and you won't want to do it? I guess my question is, if you have a 20-year-old who's struggling with weight, do you think it'll be easier than a 40-year-old or a 60-year-old?
Good question. I think it's a combination of all those things, because we are shaped by our experiences. So if someone grew up in a household where exercise, eating healthy was not important to them, and they got fed all kinds of food whenever they wanted, when they were sad or stressed, imagine someone like that's in their 20s versus someone that's in their 40s that grew up with more discipline and more of that mental fortitude that we're talking about, and they started wrestling when they were 10 years old or whatever. That person probably has more tools at their disposal to utilize, but the 20-year-old has youth on their side. And maybe at that time, their body would bounce back quicker and lose weight quicker because they are younger, versus a 40-year-old whose maybe testosterone is lower and their hormones have shifted since their 20s. So it's almost comparing apples to oranges. But here's what I want to get across is, I think no matter who you are, no matter your background, no matter your starting point, right now, doing this journey, wherever your starting point is, it's all about making progress. It's not about getting to this end goal of, hey, I want to get to 5% body fat and look good so that other people will like me, so that I'll like myself, so that then I'll magically be happy. It's about becoming a better version of yourself as we go throughout life. And there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be seasons of going hardcore and hustling and being disciplined. And there might be seasons of like, okay, finding more of a middle road that's not so hardcore, but that's more balanced. So, I feel like that's what life's about, no matter what your starting point is. Even if you start lifting at 70 years old, it's about progressing and finding things to, improve upon and get better at, to make progress so that you can, see that progress you made. And I feel like that's what it's about.
I saw that you were actually on a podcast on Mark's Daily Apple.
Yes.
One of the people I admire a lot has been, I saw one of his speeches, it was incredibly interesting. But I know that when he talks about exercise, he always says you need to have fun. So it's not just going to the gym and lifting weights. What's your take on exercise? Obviously, you're a personal trainer, so you follow a certain regimen. But if you really would reflect average American, average person in the world, would you recommend to have a sport activity like, I don't know, basketball or hockey, like, I don't know what people find interesting, or to actually have 30 minutes hit in fitness? What do you think?
So it depends. It's very individual, and this is why fitness, we try to make it a one-size-fits-all approach so everyone looks the same, so everyone gets the same body. But it all depends on what your goals are. If you are doing exercise just as therapy, walking is probably the best exercise you can do for therapy. Getting out in nature and walking, you're not going to get a six-pack from that probably, but the mental and emotional benefits you get from going outside and walking are huge. But if you're trying to put on muscle, you're going to need to lift some heavy stuff, right? You're going to need to go to the gym, lift some heavy weights. But if you're trying to become an athlete at a specific sport, you're going to have to go in there and do some type of cardio or running. Like if you're basketball, you're going to have to work on jumping and footwork and shooting. Like, it's so individual, it's so different. But if you're just your average person trying to be healthy, find something that doesn't feel like a chore to you, and be open to trying new things. Like if you've only done cardio your whole life, you know what I'm saying? If you've only done the treadmill or running, maybe try something a little bit different to switch it up. Maybe you try yoga, or maybe you try biking, or maybe you try rowing, or maybe you try whatever it is, something different. Because what happens is when your body has been doing the same workout for years or decades, it adapts so well to that it adapts so well to that one form of exercise that now your body has to burn less calories to do the same amount of work. When, like, your first day, like let's say you've never ran before. The first day of running, you're going to be sore, you're going to be huffing and puffing, you might vomit, you might feel nauseous, like you'll be sweating profusely. But if you do that same exercise, for a month straight, on day 30 versus day 1, it's going to be a lot easier for you. And your body's going to become more efficient and have to burn less calories to do the same amount of work. So that's why it's important to always switch it up. Find new sports, find new techniques of exercise that feel fun to you, that can also be therapeutic, but also maybe something that gives you the results that you want. Maybe you want a little bit more muscle mass, you want to be a little bit leaner. You're going to have to do some type of probably resistance training, whether that's with weights or body weight exercises. And so, that's why I say it's very individual, for each person. Maybe
let's take the same question from a different perspective and put
Sure.
the goal of anti-aging in there, or on the one side, anti-aging, what kind of exercises are we looking then? And on the other side, pretty much high performance, high energy, a body that can deal with a lot of stress. If you look at these two goals, what type of exercise are we talking about? Are we talking about, long distance walking, condition training? Are we talking about sports, lifting weights? What if let's say somebody likes basketball or something? How would you train them from the perspective of anti-aging and from the perspective of he's an entrepreneur and wants to get a lot of energy?
Yeah, so if someone's just focused on anti-aging, I probably formulate something for them along the lines of, 2 days or 3 days max of heavy lifting, because as you age, building some lean muscle mass will help improve your hormones, because naturally, some hormones will naturally decrease over time. Boosting your muscle mass will give you more balance in your hormones, and I feel like it helps with other things like osteoporosis. So bone density is really important as you age, and I feel like doing some type of lifting is very, very important. The other thing I would say would be more getting out in nature, more therapeutic work, things like yoga, hiking. Getting out in nature would be great for anti-aging, because those things are more about stress management. When you lift weights, it's a stress on the body. When you're doing things like yoga, hiking, getting out in nature, it's not as much of a stress. It's actually reduces your stress levels. And so that's the type of approach I would do for that. If you're a high performer, you want to be an athlete, a high entrepreneur, you're gonna have to do more explosive forms of exercise. So I think honestly, something like CrossFit every once in a while, maybe 2 days a week, that's very explosive. You get your heart rate to its maximum levels, or some type of high intensity interval training where you maybe sprint. Sprinting is probably one of the best exercises you could do that we don't do anymore, because you usually do it in sports. But sprinting of some type, getting your heart rate up to its maximum levels, is great for performance in so many ways. And so if you are an athlete or you're a high-end entrepreneur trying to get as much out of the workouts, because the other thing is you don't have hours to work out. You need short, quick, efficient workouts that give you more bang for your buck. And I would say some type of high-intensity interval training, whether that's through a sport like CrossFit or just doing your own high-intensity interval training, cardio or lifting, would give you the most bang for your buck in the shortest amount of time.
It sounds to me like a lot of these things that you're explaining, like sprinting, having long walks, it's almost all solved if you get a dog.
It's so true. Yeah, there you go. Or just get a dog.
But do you feel like, for instance, if you have clients, do you recommend them getting a dog to just lose weight? Or like, does that actually help?
I've never recommended that to anyone, but now that you say that, I can see why some people would benefit from that. But it's different, because not everyone can have a dog. Maybe they live in a place that doesn't allow dogs, or maybe they don't like dogs. But for sure, I can see that correlation there between having a dog and having to be more active and sprinting and running, like great form of exercise. That's why we have one, and my girls love having a dog, and it forces them to get exercise.
Which breed do you guys have?
We have a Spinoni. It's an Italian hunting breed, Spinoni, and his name is Huckleberry.
Oh, nice. We got a puppy in August. That's like a couple of months ago now, and I do notice that we walk much more, and I do tend to sprint a lot because he's growing up and tends to run fast. But the moment you said sprinting, I was like, oh, well, that's what I'm doing with a dog, and I would never do it before. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I want to talk from the perspective, well, there are two things I still kind of want to cover, which is the business part of it, because I feel like what you've done is much more than what a personal trainer does. I think you really handled PR brilliantly, but also came up with a really good idea and somehow built an amazing structure around it. So I really want to cover the business part of it, but before we do, I also want to hear about the diet part. There are so many diets out there. You've mentioned obviously high fats, stuff like that. I've been in America a couple of times. I've been in Austin, in San Francisco, in New York. I know that when I walk around in a supermarket in America, it's not the same as in Europe. So can you explain a little bit about the diets? What kind of diets would you recommend? And how do you go about finding the right foods in supermarkets or not supermarkets to really get your diet in place?
Yeah, good question. So first and foremost, I'm a bigger fan of people eating whole foods as much as possible. I don't care if you're keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian. Focusing on whole food sources 80-90% of the time is probably the healthiest, best approach. If you're eating a lot of highly processed foods, whether you're doing keto, paleo, vegan, or vegetarian, even those diets aren't the healthiest, options if you're eating mostly highly processed foods. And what I mean by that is, lower quality ingredients, or eating lots of treats like cookies, like vegan cookies or vegan donuts or keto ice cream, whatever it is. If that's what you're eating majority of the time, those diets probably aren't the healthiest thing for you. But if you're eating mostly whole foods, then for me, that's kind of what I'm a proponent of. With that being said, I am a big fan of the ketogenic diet. That's why I have a book called Complete Keto. It's more of a whole foods approach, a healthier approach to doing the ketogenic diet, to be totally honest with you, because of the mental performance I get from it. When my brain is running off ketones, I feel like I can go longer, harder. My focus and energy are through the roof all day long. I don't get these spikes and crashes like I do when I eat lots of processed carbohydrates. And my digestion is way better because I only have to eat once or twice a day. And I feel like it's a great option for people that are busy, like entrepreneurs, parents. It's a great option because you're not having to meal prep 6 small meals throughout the day, eat every 2 or 3 hours, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, that's why I love the ketogenic diet. So that consists of mostly high fats, moderate amount of protein, and a very low carb approach. And so what that looks like going to the grocery store is, filling your grocery cart with, lots of healthy fats like coconut oil, avocado oil, things like avocados, olives, higher fat content quality meats, so things like steak or eggs or, even sometimes I'll do bacon, I'll do grass-fed butter, and then lots of vegetables.
Which grass-fed butter brand do you get?
I think it's called Pasture Raised, if I remember correctly. I
that's
can't
the
remember.
brand name, Pasture Raised. Okay.
Pasture
what do you think
Raised.
of Kerrygold? Because that's been going pretty, that's the recommendation in the keto world. Kerrygold.
Yeah.
And,
But then I don't know, I haven't looked too deeply into the article about how their grass-fed isn't really grass-fed. I don't know. All I know is, I don't think it's a horrible brand. I do buy it every once in a while. Is it making me sicker, unhealthier? Probably not. I don't eat a ton of butter, to be honest with you. I don't eat a ton of coconut oil, to be honest with you. So I don't think there's one superior brand. But adding healthy fats to your diet, your brain will thank you. I promise you, your brain will be a lot sharper, more mental clarity, more focus, more energy throughout the day if you're eating high quality, healthy fats. And then I get all my carbohydrate sources from vegetables. So lots of greens, broccoli,
all
asparagus.
your carbs are only vegetable?
For the most part, yeah. Yep.
Don't you have, for instance, sometimes I have an immense craving when I'm exercising a lot and the vegetables aren't going to cut it for me. How do you make sure that your carb feeling is satiated after exercising?
Yeah, good question. So when you're on the ketogenic diet and your body is keto adapted, which means you've been doing keto for a long period of time, your body's efficient at using ketones as an alternative fuel source. So ketones are kind of like a fourth macronutrient. So we have proteins, fats, carbs, right? That's what makes up our food. But ketones are an energy source without any calories. So when your ketones are elevated in your blood, your body doesn't feel as starving or as hangry like when you do a hard workout. You don't have to eat right away afterwards like most people think you do. So having a high quality and high amounts of protein and fat in your diet will keep you satiated for hours, versus if you eat carbs, you're satiated for about an hour or two maybe, but then the glucose, you burn through that so fast that you need to replenish it every couple hours, every few hours throughout the day, especially if you're high energy, you're doing lots of workouts. Now, I will say this, if you're doing glycolytic workouts, meaning CrossFit, sprinting, jiu-jitsu, martial arts, those kinds of workouts might require more carbohydrates than, slow, steady cardio or maybe heavy lifting, because those aren't as glycolytic. So it is very individual. But for me, when I'm just maintaining, I'm not building muscle or focusing on performance, most of my carbs do come from those vegetables that I mentioned, which are low in carbohydrates. So, but I'm okay with eating fruits or potatoes or sweet potatoes every now and then. But you just have to limit those if you're trying to stay in ketosis. So for me, I could get away with eating 50 to 75 grams of carbs normally and still being in ketosis. But your average person might need to eat 20 or 30 grams of carbs to be able to stay in ketosis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's different for each person. So that's kind of my recommendations for diet.
Maybe a more personal question then. So I do the martial arts. So you mentioned that I obviously, and I've heard this before, that if you do high intensity trainings like that last for hours, you'd need more carbs. How do you maybe compensate for, let's say I've eaten, I'm quite well, I'm well fed, I don't want to eat anymore, but somehow I have what I call my second stomach, and I want that piece of chocolate, or I need something to just close my meal. I think that's more probably an emotional response, but you're a very unique person where I can actually ask you, so how do you deal with that? How do you stop this second stomach, or just this thought that you need something to close this meal? And I've had days where I'm like mentally strong and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do it today. But then like the next day, I just like, I did it yesterday, I can't do it today. So how do you deal with that?
So here's a good question to ask yourself. And here's the difference to know if it's hunger or if it's a craving. So if you ask yourself, am I hungry enough to eat chicken and broccoli? And if that sounds appealing to you,
no,
and that sounds good, okay, so then you know that that's just a craving then. Because if you're hungry, if you're truly hungry, you will want to eat plain chicken and broccoli, right? Because you're truly hungry. But if you're like, all right, I'm not hungry for that, I want chocolate or I want whatever the treat is, that's when you know it's a craving. And that's where meditation, things like that can help out with, all right, what is this trigger coming from? What's the stem? Is it because I want a craving because I feel like I deserve something? Or am I really hungry and I need a little bit more extra calories? That's kind of the question to ask yourself. But here's the thing. If you're working really hard, you're doing martial arts, you're burning a lot of calories. You can probably get away with a treat or whatever it is every now and then to feel good. It's a dopamine hit to your brain, to your system. You might need that every once in a while. So I'm not saying don't do that and don't look at it as a bad thing. I don't think food should be labeled good or bad. There's good or bad consequences to foods. But if there's no bad consequences to this food, it might be okay for you to have every once in a while. But really check in with yourself before you eat it. What's your intention behind wanting to eat whatever the treat is? What's the intention? Is it to escape? Is it to numb yourself? Is it to suppress some type of emotion that you're feeling at that point in time? That's where food can become unhealthy, is if our intention is to, okay, I'm stressed out, I'm having a hard day, give me the wine, give me the chocolate, give me the cake, because I need something to, suppress these emotions.
So when this thought pops up, your recommendation is then take like a Headspace or a Calm app and just put on like a 5-minute or a 2-minute guided meditation.
Yes, or if you did your meditation that morning, learning how to become the observer in that moment. So when you're craving that thing, your second stomach kicks in, observing, okay, what's really happening, right? And maybe some extra breath work or some extra meditation could help out. We're like, all right, what is this trigger that's really happening, and what does this stem from? So it's up to you, the individual, to figure out what the trigger stems from, and that you might need to do some journaling, some deep work of like, all right, is this something that has been a pattern of mine since I was a kid, or when did this start? How did it start? And what does that stem from? So it takes a lot of self-discovery to really figure that part out. For you, it's something small, right? For other people, it might be 1,000, 2,000 calories of binge eating a lot of junk food, and they're just blind to the fact that, oh, this stems from in the past when I was a kid, I was stressed out, and so my grandma would make me cookies anytime I was sad, or whatever it is. Like it's very individual. So that's kind of where the self-discovery, self-awareness, need to come into play.
So it sounds to me almost like during your first journey, you said you learned a lot of empathy, but it sounds to me like you were going through this experience of getting fit again, and every time you had a craving, you would just reflect, journal about why you were having a craving. And then that means that you're pretty much meditating, well, not nonstop, but every time there's a craving in the beginning.
Well, I didn't actually pick this stuff up until years after my first experiment. So I don't want to make it sound like this is what I learned from my first experiment. I didn't start meditating until years after Fit2Fat2Fit. I started meditating in 2015 when I was going through my divorce. When I hit my rock bottom, that's when I started to really dig into this stuff a lot deeper and figure out, okay, well, how does this meditation work? Oh, okay, I see all these connections. I can connect the dots so much better. I see where my anger or my whatever weakness I think I have, I can see where all this stuff stems from now. And now that I know where it stems from, now I can learn to let that go and not be attached to it, not be emotionally attached to that trigger, right? And so this happened after Fit2Fat2Fit, to be honest with you. It happened when I went through my personal divorce, hit rock bottom, started doing therapy, life coaching, reading books, meditating, positive affirmations, gratitude list. That's where all this, I started doing that.
How did you deal with the cravings then in the beginning if you weren't meditating about it?
That was more willpower, to be honest with you. I had a lot of willpower and discipline from wrestling, playing sports, the environment I grew up in. That was kind of instilled into me at a young age. So I had the discipline to willpower my way through those hard moments of cravings and being accountable to my audience. So for me, I would say it was a little bit different based on my background and the experiences that I had had and the discipline that I had. But also here I was on a pretty well-known website, people following me on social media. And I was so afraid if I went to the grocery store and picked up Cinnamon Toast Crunch or soda, whatever it is, whatever treat it was, I was afraid of like someone seeing me and be like, oh, the Fit2Fat2Fit guy, what are you doing with these brownies and these cookies in your cart? And so anyways, yeah.
How, maybe a relevant question then, obviously with this next, in January when you're going to start going back to fit, I can imagine you'd be doing the meditation to handle the cravings and stuff like that. The accountability is going to be there as well. But the willpower aspect, that's something that comes natural to you. How would you teach someone this, like willpower? How would you teach discipline to somebody who's never had discipline or who's had discipline but maybe lost it because, life happens? And they have to rebuild discipline, willpower. How would you do that? Would it be maybe smarter to start going to things like a team sport or wrestling, like you said, these type of sports where a coach teaches you discipline, and then start your fit journey, or what's your take on that?
Oh yeah, I think sports, man, that's why I think they're so beneficial to kids. Like for me, I learned how to be disciplined from a very young age. But as an older person that's never played sports, it might be hard to jump into sports right now. But there's ways like I think going to CrossFit, that kind of puts you, like, for example, there's some CrossFit classes where you're responsible for counting how many reps you're doing. Do you have integrity to yourself to cheat, or to just have that integrity and be like, okay, I'm getting beat by these people in the class and I'm counting my reps. I'm not skipping reps. I'm not skipping parts of the workout. That's kind of where you kind of figure out, okay, man, I'm just this soft person that I'm cheating all the time to look good to my fellow friends that are doing CrossFit. That might be a good place to figure out, or just a group fitness class where you're like, all right, I got to do what everyone else is doing. But there's a really good book, two good books that I would help out. One is Discipline Equals Freedom by Jocko Willink. It's a really good book by a former Navy SEAL. It might be a little bit extreme for some people, but then another book to balance that out is Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy. A really great book and great perspective on willpower. And it's not so much about not having willpower. And his approach, his opinion is about shifting the perception of what people think they need to do, like have that willpower, that discipline to break free, to do the hard things. But his is a smarter approach based off of research, and it has to do more with changing your environment. And humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. And if we could learn to change our environment and then adapt to that new environment, change happens naturally as a byproduct of adapting to that new environment. And so you got to get creative at finding ways to change your environment so that you're forced to adapt. And in that adaptation process, change will eventually come from that. So it's a really good book too.
How did you use that in your life to build willpower and discipline?
Yeah, how do I use that in my life?
Yeah, how did you use that? Because it sounds really smart, of course, but then
yeah,
how do you? I mean, I guess the accountability support group is one area of that, but how can you give an example of other things that you've used that principle for?
Yeah, for sure. So setting my alarm, or my phone further away from me, so that when I wake up in the morning, my alarm goes off, I have to walk across the room, which forces me to wake up. Then I have to go pee. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm already awake. Okay. And then from there, it's sleeping in my gym clothes. Like, all right, I'm going to sleep in my gym clothes so that I don't have to make the excuse of like, oh, I don't know what to wear. What am I supposed to wear? You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I'm already in my gym clothes. I've had to wake up, go turn my alarm off, go pee. I'm already awake. I'm already dressed for the gym. Oh, in my fridge, I already have my food prepped and ready to go, my pre-workout, whatever it is. I have no excuse now because now my new environment has set me up for success where I'm like, all right, my pre-workout or my food is ready to go first thing in the morning. I'm already in my gym clothes. And then from there, you start creating these new habits. And then based off of those new habits that you're creating, change will ultimately come. Those are just a few small examples.
That's actually a really good example. Thanks for sharing. That first book from Jocko Willink, I read his book, Extreme Ownership. I really love it. What did you learn from that? Because obviously Jocko is a very extreme case of discipline.
Yeah.
On Instagram every morning, it's like 4 o'clock or something like that. He wakes up. So what did you get out of such an extreme example of discipline and willpower? How did you apply that into your life? Because obviously you're not a Navy SEAL, so how do you apply that into your life?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I would say that book and another book, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Oh, I read that. I love it as well.
So such a good book. I think for me, what I got out of those two books was the fact that, we all have these self-limiting beliefs and we all have these little comfort zones that we live in. Like we live in a world of comfort in 2020. Like if I'm cold, I could turn the heater up in my home, or I could put blankets on. Or if I want to take a warm shower, we have warm water, especially in, a lot of first world countries. You have the ability to do that. Oh, you want cold food? Your refrigerator will keep it cold for you. Or you want ice out of the refrigerator? Like we have all these comforts that have been so, made us so comfortable. We have these self-limiting beliefs of like, oh, I can't do that. That's too hard. That's impossible for me, because we become so comfortable with our lives the way they are. What those books taught me was, okay, maybe there's something outside of my self-limiting beliefs, outside of this comfort zone, that maybe I can do that I used to think was impossible. One good example of that is about 6 months ago, I decided to run a 100-mile run in under 24 hours. And I've never ran a marathon. I've never ran a half marathon. I was not born a runner. I do not enjoy running. And I trained for 7 months out of my life for a 100-mile run. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was the most uncomfortable things I've ever done. I hate running still. But I was able to achieve that impossible task barely. It was one of the hardest things I've ever been through physically and mentally. But I did it. And had I not read those books, I never would have thought outside of the box, like, okay, what else can I do? And for someone, it might not be 100 miles, but for someone, it might be 1 mile. Or for someone, it might be going to the gym 5 days a week. Or it might be meal prepping and eating vegetables every single day. Like, whatever your hard is, whatever your impossible is, I promise you have these self-limiting beliefs that have kept you in the comfort zone your whole life because you're scared. Maybe you have failed. Maybe you've tried something hard and you failed at it. So you're like, okay, well, I'm not doing this anymore. So basically, those are the lessons I took away from those.
When you read those books, is it possible that you then got the idea to do that experiment all over again, even though you were older, or was that already before that you set out to do this experiment again?
I had already made the decision. Well, no, that's not true. Actually, after I read the David Goggins book, I attempted my first 100-mile run and actually failed at that. So I should probably throw that in there. And then I got 80 miles done. But after doing 80 miles, I was like, man, that's still way further than I ever thought I could go. What else? Maybe if I train for this, I can actually achieve it. And then it wasn't until, and I read Discipline Equals Freedom probably a few years ago, but I think those things were little things that after a long while, all those little things combined with which helped me with the idea of like, maybe I should do Fit2Fat2Fit again as a 40-year-old.
That's nice. I actually read the book as well, Can't Hurt Me, when it came out. And also started running. I think I finished like 3 or 4 half marathons.
Awesome, dude.
Almost finished a marathon. There was no marathon. They canceled it this year, but I was running to the beach, and the beach was like just below a marathon, so I didn't make the marathon. But this is really interesting that we're covering this, because I started running and I ran a lot, and I think that's one of the symptoms when you read David Goggins' book. But what I noticed is I did not lose any weight, and I was running quite long distances.
Yeah.
I did read some research when I used to when I was really into diets. I read a lot of research behind it, as many do who are interested in anti-aging. One of the papers that I read was about the compensation method that people have biologically for when they exercise. They somehow compensated after a couple of days with food. I did notice that when I was running, that was it really happened a lot. And so I even though I tried to fast or I tried to not eat, I still didn't lose weight. And when I'm looking at a lot of runners, somehow they also don't seem to be like Usain Bolt or something like that. What's your take on marathon runners or just runners in general and running for losing weight?
I think it can be effective for some people. You know, you look at your marathon runners, the leaders, none of them are bulky and none of them have a lot of fat on their bodies, but they're skinnier, right? For sure, because that's what the body for most people will do if that's what you're training for. You look at most football players, they're not skinny. They have a lot of muscle, right? A lot of muscle everywhere. Sprinters, same thing, thicker thighs. It's different, but I think for each person, it's very individual. Like for me, I still had quite a bit of muscle mass, even though I was training for a 100-mile run. I got skinnier. I did lose some weight, but I wouldn't say I looked like a runner by the end of it. So it takes years. Like you've been practicing probably martial arts for a long time. Your body's adapted to that form of exercise. And you running for a season or two or however long you were doing it for, shifted slightly, but your body kind of goes back to its almost default mode for most people, unless you do something really extreme for a long period of time. Your body, it's gonna, like right now, look what my body's adapted to, putting on 53 pounds in the past 3 months. But I'm not like morbidly obese either. If you look at me, I still have some muscle on my body. It's not like I'm completely flabby. It takes time, a long time, sometimes for your body to change and adapt to a new environment. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
Okay, I didn't know that. What's a long time? What do you think is a long time?
For some people, it could be years. For example, let's say someone this is really skinny, wants to put on a lot of muscle mass. I promise you, if they lift hard for 4 or 5 days a week, for 6 months to a year straight, most people, maybe 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle. But are they going to look like Ronnie Coleman after a year? Are they going to look like Jay Cutler after 1 year? No. That might take 5+ years to get that look. So it depends on how extreme you're trying to go. Like if you are trying to lose weight by running, right? You don't look overweight to me at all, first of all. So I don't know what you're trying to lose.
The camera is above the belly, so.
Yeah. But, it's very individual. Like there's a lot of variables that go into weight loss. A lot of people think, calories in versus calories out. Yes, the law of thermodynamics still apply, but there's a lot of other variables. I don't know what your sleep or stress levels are like. I don't know what your hormones look like. I don't know what your daily routine or your diet looks like. So there's a lot that would have to go into that. But that's why I want people to know is that change takes time. Like if you lost 1 pound a month, for 12 months, that's 12 pounds a year, right? And most people will probably lose more than that. Maybe let's say 1 pound a week. That's 52 pounds in 1 year. Even though that's slow progress, you want to lose 10 pounds a week. 1 pound a week for some people is like, that's taking too long. It's like, it takes time to change. Just be patient with your body. Tweak things as you go to figure out, okay, what's helping, what's not helping. Maybe supplementation, maybe changing up my food, changing up my diet, changing up my workout routine. So just either way, don't give up.
So based on that, then thought process, that means that let's say somebody who hasn't been let's say has a child or teenager, they've been very active in specific sports. Let's say it was American football or something like that. They now become an adult. Life takes over. 5 to 10 years, they haven't exercised. They now call a personal trainer. They want to exercise again. Based on what you just said, it would be much better for that person to go back to training football because their body is adapted to that. It will revert back to those, as lean as they used to be. So why do a lot of personal trainers then let them do strength exercises or let them go to the gym 3 times a week?
That's a good question, because it's probably not doable for them to go back and play football. Like, where are you going to play football as a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old, right? It would be hard to go back into that sport. But you can mimic some of those movements through some functional training in the gym still. So power type of movements, depending on what type of equipment they have. I think every athlete, no matter the sport, things like deadlift, power cleans, clean and jerk, these Olympic movements can be applied and carried over into so many sports. And that's why I think, those types of movements can be applied to mimic some of the movements that you might see, explosiveness that you might see in some sports. And so weightlifting, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and that's why I kind of like CrossFit. CrossFit is a great thing for former athletes because it's got a competitive nature to it. You're doing explosive movements from time to time. And so I feel like you can get similar results in a workout format like CrossFit, for example.
I haven't done CrossFit. I've been pretty interested in CrossFit, but I think the one thing that keeps popping up when I talk to other people that want to do CrossFit, not the actual people that do CrossFit, is all the injuries that come with CrossFit. Like, I've heard popped shoulders. I've never heard of rhabdo until it was associated with CrossFit. What's your take on CrossFit and the injuries on that? Am I just being worried for nothing?
Yeah. No, I'm more unbiased. Like, I'm not pro CrossFit, but I'm not anti CrossFit. I think if you're going to do CrossFit, make sure your coach or whoever is leading you through the workouts is experienced. They know what they're doing, and they don't allow you to go, they don't allow you to, push yourself to the point of a possible injury. That's the problem I think some people have, is like, oh, if you push yourself harder, you're going to get more results. But then sometimes if you're doing a certain movement in the workout ineffectively, and you're doing that movement 100 times in that workout, an injury is most likely going to happen at some point. But if you have a good coach that teaches you the basics, teaches you the fundamentals, teaches you the correct form, and starts you out small. Like, that's the problem, is a lot of people go in with an ego. Like, okay, I'm a guy. Why am I lifting less weight than this girl over here? Well, she's been doing this for years, and this is your first day. So until you get the form down, we're not going to allow you to go heavy on the lifts until you can show us you can do 20, 30, 40 reps of these without breaking form. And that's the important thing. So I think CrossFit sometimes gets a bad rap because you got people in there that are just yelling at you to push harder, but not really focusing on form. It depends on where you go. It's like, it's like religion. You might go to one church in one area of the world and have a bad experience, but if you go to somewhere else, you might have a good experience. So it's
just
different.
Check that the coach doesn't push too hard, and that injuries aren't very common in that place.
And leave your ego at the door.
True, that's a good one. Maybe a question that I had as we wrap up the diet portion of these questions is fasting. What's your take on fasting, and then specifically intermittent fasting, which is usually like 14 to 16 hours, and OMAD, 1 meal a day, which is like a 24-hour fast.
So first of all, I'm a big fan of fasting, not so much for physical weight loss benefits. Yes, there are some physical weight loss benefits to fasting, but there's a reason it's been practiced by every major religion, since the beginning of time, probably, because there's a mental and spiritual aspect to fasting that some people think is overlooked. But from a physical perspective, great for anti-aging, great for reducing inflammation, great for improving digestion. We are a society of food on demand. You can eat whenever you want to. You push a button and you got food coming to your door nowadays. But I think back in the days, our ancestors didn't have access to grocery stores and fast food places, so they had to hunt and gather their food. And they might not have had food for a day or two or a week or two or sometimes even more. And our bodies have this amazing ability to tap into stored fat as a source of energy to keep us going. And that's what ketosis is. That's why I love the keto diet, because it allows you to still function properly, your brain, muscles, and organs, even without food. And so, but we've been so accustomed to eating when we wake up and eating all the way until we go to sleep, because we have an abundance of food nowadays, which is awesome. It's saved so many people's lives and kept us from dying from starvation. But I think fasting is great for anti-aging, like I said, all those health benefits, but mentally as well, it's good to take a break from food every once in a while. And then spiritually, if you're spiritual, there are some spiritual aspects to fasting. Getting that food out of your system and allowing you to focus on other areas of your life are really, really important. I promise you, if you fast for 2-3 days, you'll find so much more time in your day because you didn't have to meal prep, you didn't have to cook anything, you didn't have to sit down and eat anything. There's so much more time to get things done when you fast. Intermittent fasting, OMAD are all great approaches. I don't think they're a magical pill when it comes to weight loss because, you know, when you cut calories out like fasting, guess what? You're going to be hungry when you start eating again. And most people balance that out with, okay, they gain the weight back pretty quickly because your body doesn't like to starve, right? So, but it is great if you can come up with an intermittent fasting protocol that works for you. But I'm a big fan of switching it up so you don't just do OMAD for the rest of your life, or you just do intermittent fasting, a 16-8 protocol for the rest of your life. Switch it up. Maybe eat breakfast sometimes every once in a while, and maybe eat 4 meals a day sometimes if you're trying to bulk up, but then go through a phase of fasting. Maybe do I've done a 7-day fast before. It wasn't easy, but maybe once a quarter, do like a 2-day fast.
A 7-day fast? How? Tell me about that.
That was about 3 or 4 years ago. I did it as an experiment, and I did it during Christmas time, which was not a good idea because I was surrounded by holiday parties and treats, and it was the worst timing in the world. But I felt really good afterwards. Even during it, I felt euphoric. But I was really, really cold because it was really cold here in Utah, and your body temperature drops significantly when you're fasting. So I'm a big fan of it, but find what protocol works for you. Do your research first. Don't just jump into it. I've done all types of fasts, water fasts, bone broth fasts, and there's all different types of fasts. There's a good book called The Complete Guide to Fasting. Start there.
Okay. Then a question on, because obviously you track yourself quite a lot, especially during these journeys. So then a fasting protocol, does it affect you hormone-wise somehow? I feel like if you would fast, your testosterone might drop. Am I overthinking things right now, or what do you think?
With fasting? Yeah, but that's the thing is if you're doing like a 7+ day fast, that's where you might get into some hormonal changes. Okay. But if you're doing it for a few days, you should be fine. But this is where individual blood testing is really important. Work with your doctor. Maybe try OMAD for 3 months. Do your blood work before, do your blood work after, see how it changes, see if it improves. But maybe some markers might not be what you want it to be, and that's why it's so important to become your own self-experimentation to find out what is optimal for you.
What do you need to ask the doctor when you do the blood test before, middle, and after? What are exactly the things you're asking your doctor?
They might have some good recommendations of what to track, but I would say at least do your lipids, do hormonal or a hormone panel. Maybe check your vitamin D levels and your DHEA levels, C-reactive protein. I don't know the names of these tests, So, but your doctor might have some good ideas.
That's a good one. Okay, clear. Maybe last question on the fasting, but if you do a lot of exercise, let's say we're talking long distance running because we were talking about that, how do you feel fasting in combination with exercise? Is that good, bad? Are you putting too much stress on your body? What do you think?
Yeah, and this is another situation where it is very individual. I like to exercise on a fasted stomach, so no food in my stomach. You know what I'm saying? I like to be, fasted when I'm exercising, even when I'm lifting weights. And that's where adding salt as a pre-workout, half teaspoon of salt, could bring so many benefits so that you're not feeling lethargic, you're not feeling fatigued, you're not feeling, dizzy like some people do. Salt is really, really important if you're going to be sweating a lot. But can add stress to your body for sure because you're stressing your body exercising, you're stressing your body fasting. So maybe something small. It just depends on what your goals are. If you're trying to put on lean muscle mass, maybe eat something, definitely eat something before and after. If you're trying to lose weight and, depending on what the workout is, you might be able to go to it. Like when I was training for my 100-miler, I would always run on an empty stomach and I felt the best doing that.
You did the entire 100-mile run on an empty stomach?
No. When I was training for it, when I would do my long runs, I would always run on an empty stomach. I definitely ate during my 100-miler.
I the when I did the long distance run, I noticed half marathon is like the cutoff point. After that, I need to eat. So I did it like once or twice, but then I was like, yeah, after half marathon, I need to eat. Just for the safety of our listeners, when you say salt, do you mean Himalayan, the pink salt, or do you have some specific salt? Because obviously, like not basic salt.
Yeah, there's a brand called Real Salt that I love. It's from here in Utah, but you can buy it online. Pink Himalayan salt's good too because all the trace minerals are still intact. The white table salt is not like that stuff is stripped of its minerals. That's not how salt is found in nature. So I would do pink Himalayan salt or maybe a sea salt or check out Real Salt.
Great. So, okay, quickly about the 100-mile run because you brought it up. It's really interesting. You never did a 100-mile run, and suddenly you didn't even run, and you were going out for the 100-mile run.
Yeah.
What went into that? The exercise, the mental, and then also like food-wise, what did you do to maintain such long distances?
Yeah, good question. So, a lot of training, a lot of running, maybe 2-3 days of lifting. And then I would do speed intervals. So speed training, hill training, and then long distance training. So pretty much my training days were 3 to 4 days a week. Sometimes they were back-to-back long runs. So maybe I would do like 15 miles one day, 17 miles the next day to train while I'm tired. Like I said, I would train fasted. But during the actual 100-mile run, I ate breakfast a few hours before I started, a high-protein, high-fat diet. And then I went into it for the first 20 miles, didn't eat anything, just water and electrolytes. And then from there, I started adding ketone supplements, ketone esters, which raise my blood ketone levels, which give me an energy source. But then on top of that, I would take in some type of carbohydrates, glucose. So that glucose plus the ketones gave me a fuel source to pull from. Maybe once every hour or so, I would have a small handful of food, just a tiny bit, to keep me going for the next hour or so. And that's kind of my strategy for the 100-mile run.
What was the exact types of food and the exact types of electrolytes that you were taking?
Yeah, so I took something called ketone ester. The brand name is called Ketone Aid. The exact foods I ate was anything that I felt, because that's the problem is like when you are running constantly for 24 hours straight, the texture of food gets old, you get tired of it. So if I'm just eating one thing, I promise you I'll get sick of it. So I ate anything from watermelon to bananas to peanut butter and honey sandwiches to M&Ms to gummy bears, Pop-Tarts, like whatever I could get in me that tasted good at the moment, because you get sick of things so quickly. And if you can't get any of the food down, you're eventually going to crash at some point. So those were the mixtures of foods that I had.
And then you said, so you would run 3-4 times a week, and you would also do some strength training. What kind of strength training are we talking about?
Slow, heavy lifts like deadlift, squats, heavy sled pushes, sled pulls, maybe some bench press and pull-ups. Simple movements, simple just to maintain my muscle mass, not really to build, but to maintain.
What did you get mentally at the end of the race? Was it relief? Was it pretty much what you said, this new realization that you can do more? Or what was going through your mind at the end?
What was going through my mind? Yeah, a sense of being proud, like amazed at what I was able to accomplish, and exhaustion. I was definitely very sleep deprived, and I was very emotional, so I definitely cried at the end. I'm glad that it was over, but really, really happy, man, that was a really cool thing that I did. What else can I do?
Did it affect your business in any way?
No, not really. If anything, I had more people's respect, but that's it.
Nice. Good to know. So then, I'm really, really interested in the business aspect as well, because we covered so much on the diet. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. The business aspect, you said you started doing a lot of this PR stuff. You started getting picked up. I really like that you gave the steps, which is super relevant for some of the beginning startups here. You then start getting picked up by Jay Leno and everybody.
Mm-hmm.
could be quite intense. I mean, you mentioned people reaching out to your parents. How did you transition from this freelancer personal trainer to having a business that can handle the intensity of all these people coming towards you?
Yeah, it took years to evolve, to be totally honest with you. It took years to evolve into what it is today. The first, I would say 4 or 5 years, I had no idea what I was doing business-wise. I just kind of was having people come to me with business ideas. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. This sounds good. So in the beginning, I didn't really know how to monetize what I was doing. I had Google ads on my website, and those performed well when a lot of people were coming to the website. And then from there, I get sponsorship deals from supplement companies that would pay me to, promote their supplements. And so I had contracts from that. And then it wasn't until I met a team back in 2016 or so that helped me with ClickFunnels. And basically I had all this content, had all these programs, but I had no idea how to market them. I would just post them on social media and hope people would buy them. So they helped me build a new website, new sales pages. We created Facebook ads about the ketogenic diet, my keto program. And we used clips from my TV shows, right? Clips on the talk shows, because it made me look legit, build up my legitimacy. And keto was super hot, super popular back then, and still is. And it exploded. My team and I, it took me to a level I never thought that we would be. It was so amazing. And then from there, that now I have like a whole team. I have a CEO. I have a board of directors. I have, a few different employees. I have a marketing team. So now it's a combined effort to make this brand, grow into what I want it to be, which is a huge, force of disruption in the fitness industry to really bring empathy to the fitness industry. So that starts from my social media posts, how I engage with people, to our strategy for each platform: podcast, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All of that, branding needs to be combined so that, one side of marketing isn't over here doing their thing. And then we have, my branding guys on my team, doing their thing separately. We're all working together as a team, and it's finally starting to come together. To be honest with you, here we are 10 years later, and I'm like, okay, now it's becoming what I want it to become. But it takes time. You got to be patient with yourself when you're building a business. You can't just think, an overnight success doesn't really happen in the business world,
A couple of weeks ago, we had, it reminds me of an episode we had with Jake Steinfeld. Do you know Jake, Body by Jake?
Oh, yeah, Body by Jake. Yep,
yeah,
I do.
He was on episode 23. But it reminds me of how he transitioned from personal training into starting his own TV network and then getting picked up, making deals with CNN and stuff like that. So it sounds to me like you were exploring that, but not in the 80s, but in this era. And then obviously the team from ClickFunnels, is that from the company ClickFunnels? They actually reached out to you, or was it just people that knew very well how to use ClickFunnels?
There's people that knew how to use ClickFunnels.
And then, so have you ever thought of establishing something like Body by Jake did with the whole, I mean, you did the TV shows and everything, but your own network and everything? Or do you think that's way too traditional, that doesn't work anymore in this 21st century? That's why you went this online route?
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely can work. It's not my demographic. That's one thing you need to know about your business is who is your demographic. Most of my demographic is online. Not everyone watches TV anymore, or the news, or, what I'm saying? Like, no one reads newspapers anymore. So my demographic is mostly online, mostly on these social platforms. So that therefore most of my content is online, but I'm not opposed to it. I had the TV show myself, and that was pretty good while it lasted. But, I can get more exposure from Facebook ads than I can from going on Dr. Oz nowadays. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way it is. So, yeah, it's all about adjusting and adapting. And, I have a different approach and a different vision of what I want to do with my business.
What is that vision? What is kind of the end goal? Where are you going towards?
Yeah, my hope is to build an empire in the fitness industry that leads with empathy. And so what I've created is a Fit2Fat2Fit certification course for trainers to become a Fit2Fat2Fit certified, so that way we have a team of trainers that can start taking on clients that are like me, because I'm only one person. People want to work with a trainer like me because I lead with empathy and have an understanding on the mental and emotional side. So I want to create a new breed of trainers in this industry under the Fit2Fat2Fit umbrella. And then from there, create master trainers. And so that way I don't have to be the face of Fit2Fat2Fit forever. So we have our supplement line, we have our programs, we have the trainers that are just coming on board now, getting certified. They're going to start taking on clients in the new year. And then from there, as that business expands and grows, then we have this huge, my hope is to have this huge sellable brand one day to where we really make an impact in the fitness industry instead of like, hey, we sell diet program like Beachbody. Love Beachbody. They're great at what they do. It's all about, fitness and exercise and nutrition and supplements. Like all that stuff is cool and important, and it's a part of people's healthy lifestyle. This is more of a complete approach to transformation that I feel like will disrupt the industry, but I am in the process of creating this new breed of trainers, having those trainers become master trainers. And then from there, I don't have to be the face of Fit2Fat2Fit for the rest of my life.
The personal trainers are going through the certification. Well, two questions there. Are they also getting fat and then getting fit again? And then the second question is, I feel like the way you do personal training has like half to do with the exercise part, but the other half is almost you're a life coach. Am I right? And so then what do you think of these two questions? Are they actually getting fat, and how are they becoming these life coaches? What are they doing differently than other personal trainers?
Good question. So no, they don't have to get fat, but the curriculum that they take is kind of all the stuff I've learned from doing what I've done is in the curriculum. They have to pass these tests and they have to be approved by me to start taking on clients. And so no, they don't have to get fat. I prefer trainers who have been overweight before, who have an understanding, that are empathetic. Like those are kind of like the type of trainers I like to attract, but they don't have to do that. The second part is, yes, a lot of the curriculum that I put out there is on the mental, emotional, and spiritual side even, implemented in with workouts and meal plans and exercise. Like all that stuff is different and unique than any other curriculum that you'll find out there, because it's just two different industries. You go to Tony Robbins to become, enlightened, whether it's financially, emotionally, spiritually, but you don't go to him for exercise and nutrition, right? But it's kind of taking that with the fitness industry and the best of both worlds, instead of like, okay, I go to the gym to work out and get healthy, but then I go read these books and go to listen to Tony Robbins to become enlightened spiritually. Why not have all of that in one place? And that's kind of what Fit2Fat2Fit is. I'm trying to do is bring, bridge that gap out there and really disrupt the industry.
Can you share some examples? I can imagine some personal trainers are actually listening to this. Can you share some examples for them of actual, like practical examples that you went through where you felt like you as a personal trainer were more of a life coach? What were you telling this person, and how did it go?
Yeah, good question. A lot of my knowledge stems from people like Brene Brown, who's an expert on guilt and shame and empathy, and I use a lot of those techniques in trying to help people. And so when I have a client focus on meditation or journaling or gratitude list, we focus a lot on that and a lot less on, hey, what did you eat today? Hey, what did you do for your workout today? It's like helping them connect the dots first and helping them become more self-aware first, so that when I do coach them on diet and exercise, then when they, let's say they had that treat that they're like, okay, I know I'm not supposed to have this treat. All right, let's dig down deep. Why? Like, what was the trigger for you? What was the situation? Okay, were you triggered by your kids, by your spouse, by your finances? What was the trigger? Okay, let's write down your emotions at that time. What were your emotions during that experience? And then now with our breath work and our meditation that we've learned, let's envision how that's going to play out next time. And let's write that down. How do we want to show up next time? But I also help them with the guilt and the shame as well. Like, okay, you ate the treat. How did you feel afterwards? Most people are like, I was mad at myself. I was disappointed. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, let's take away that reaction. Let's learn how to separate ourselves from that emotion, that reaction. And instead of feeling guilt and shame, we can be aware of it, but we can then observe it and let it go and not attach ourselves to it. And so it's very, like, what I'm trying to explain is like, it's not as simple as it sounds, where one day they're binge eating food, the next day they're spiritually enlightened and they never eat junk food again. It's a long process. This took me years to figure out how to do. And this is the key for people's transformation, is it might take years And that's okay. And that's normal. Like most people aren't going to be able to figure out how to do this in 30 days, get a 6-pack, and then be happy for the rest of their life. Like that's what the fitness industry pitches to people. Like, hey, 30-day program. Yes, you'll see some physical results, but it's going to be a journey probably for years of their life after that.
A lot of people kind of always focus on that journey that you go through. Before we kind of move on to wrapping up, I want to know about the in-between, the actual maintenance. You get fit. I always hear it's really tough to remain fit. So how do you remain fit? What do you do to maintain everything for a decade?
That's a really good question. And it has to do with letting go of the expectations of always being 5% body fat, never messing up. Like that perception needs to shift. And so shifting that perception takes time for most people. And so for me, what my maintenance looks like is 80%, maybe 90% of the time I'm on point, like I'm disciplined. But then if I have a season or two, maybe like a month where I'm like, I'm not pushing myself as hard, I'm not, as strict with my diet, like what's happening? Okay, well, I'm stressed out because my relationship with my girlfriend, or, my kids are going through a hard time and I'm not as into this fitness thing as I normally am. And that's okay. Instead of beating myself up and like, all right, discipline, push myself more willpower, like just letting it be that, hey, I'm not going to be as ripped and shredded right now because I just had a new baby and I'm building a business. And so I don't have as much time to dedicate to this, but that's okay. Like instead of beating myself up, because a lot of people are either all in or all out. They're either on their diet or they're off their diet. And so shifting that perception is the key to maintenance over time. Just realize that you're not going to be perfect all the time. And so anyways, that's kind of my approach is to shifting people's perception, because people think it's an all or nothing approach. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, so then you have like a month where you do a little bit less, but then the next month you recuperate. How do you make sure that it doesn't snowball into, I passed last month, I didn't want to work out. Oh, it's still hard this month, I don't want to work out. How do you keep from like snowballing?
So that's where accountability plays in. And that's where I think hiring a coach, even doesn't have to be a fitness personal trainer, just somebody to keep you accountable is really, really important. Because if it's just you, not everyone trusts themselves. I'll be totally honest with you. Like there's times where some people need a coach, because if it's like, oh, I'll do this by myself, and then 1 month goes by, 2 months goes by, 3 months go by, and they're like, oh, I was supposed to go back to the gym. But if they have a coach, an accountability coach, to be like, all right, it's been 3 weeks. Like, where are we at? Let's do this. Like, hey, I'm going to come pick you up from your house. We're going to go for that walk together, and then we'll start from there. Sometimes we need that coach. We need that accountability, or we need a support system, so that we're not just on this journey by ourselves all the time. And that's what's so cool about having a support system. So kind of circles back to what we talked about in the beginning, right?
And then last question on actual maintenance. So practically, what were you doing through the week? How many times are you exercising when you're in maintenance mode? How strict are you on food? What kind of supplements are you taking?
Yeah, so usually 4 to 5 days a week of exercise, like structured exercise. On the weekends, maybe I'll go on a bike ride with my girls, or maybe I'll go on a hike by myself. Like those aren't structured workouts for me. It's just, hey, get out in nature, do something fun, do something active. As far as my diet goes, I'm pretty, when I'm maintaining, I don't need to be as strict. So maybe 5 days, I'm really good for the most part. And then maybe 2 days on the weekends, I'll have a dessert, or maybe I'll go out with some friends and have a few drinks. Like that for me is more sustainable. As far as supplements go, I have my own supplement line called Complete Wellness. So I have a full lineup of keto-friendly products like BHBs, which are exogenous ketones, keto meal replacement maybe once or twice a week if I'm in a hurry, MCT oil that I add to my coffee in the morning. I have my powdered greens, which taste amazing. I take those once a day as an insurance policy just to make sure I'm getting all the nutrients. I have a bunch of wellness products. I definitely highly recommend vitamin D3 plus K2 to anyone out there. That you should be supplementing with vitamin D unless you're out in the sun all the time. Let's see what else.
Why the vitamin K2?
The K2 helps the D3 become more bioavailable, so absorbable into the body. So that's why we have vitamin D3 plus K2, because it helps the body absorb the vitamin D3 better. Also krill oil, turmeric, apple cider vinegar, and those
I've
are
heard
supplements I
about
take.
the apple cider vinegar, but you take that daily, and why do you take it?
Yeah, I take it daily in pill form. As you know, apple cider vinegar tastes gross, right? It doesn't
It's
taste
horrible.
good, but it's really healthy for you. So many health benefits: better digestion, helps to alkalize the body. It can improve blood sugar response, so you don't get blood sugar spikes as much. Let's see. There's a ton of other benefits, but
And the turmeric, why the turmeric?
it's an anti-inflammatory, so it helps reduce inflammation in the body. Yep.
And structured exercise, what does that exactly mean?
So that means like going to the gym for 60 minutes, warming up, doing my structured workout, cooling down, stretching, foam rolling. That's like a structured workout versus, hey, I'm going to go for a hike today,
Okay, and it's then isolated muscles that you work out on.
Usually I'll do, like upper body day or lower body day. Sometimes I'll do just strict legs, and then one day I'll do shoulders. I like to mix it up, so I don't have like a routine that I do the same all the time. I like to mix it up where I'll do more of like functional training. I'll do more of like a CrossFit style workout, and then I'll do more of like a bodybuilder phase, and then go in and out. You know what I'm saying?
And fasting during maintenance mode, how does your fasting look like? Do you just do intermittent or OMAD? What are you doing?
16-8 is like my go-to. It's like my default mode. 16-8 lunch and dinner. I have some type of fat coffee in the morning. And that's pretty much it. I feel really good with that protocol.
I saw that you do like bulletproof coffee. You have a specific recipe for your bulletproof coffee?
So I use coffee, and then I add my MCT oil. So we have a different flavored MCT oils like vanilla. We just launched a white chocolate peppermint for the holidays.
You can flavor MCT oil? I thought it was just fat.
Well, it is fat, but we made it into a powder form, and then in the powder form you can add in natural flavors. But yeah, it tastes amazing. It tastes so much better. Coffee tastes so much better.
Yeah,
with,
the MCT oil just ruins the flavor.
It's so true.
Nice. Okay, so then you add a little bit of that powdered MCT oil into coffee. Do you add any like ghee or butter or anything?
For me, no, I used to. I used to do a lot of high fat in my diet back in the day, but for me, I don't need as much fat necessarily. If anything, I'll add more protein than I used to. But yeah, I actually don't add a ton of butter or ghee to my coffee anymore. I used to, but I cook with it. I cook, add it to my vegetables and saute the vegetables in it.
How do you know how much fat you need? What is it that you're tracking that okay, this is how much fat I need, this is how much protein?
So you could use a macro calculator. There's tons of websites you can go and enter in your statistics, and it'll spit you out an estimate of what your calories should be and how much fat. So here's the thing. When it comes to keto, you want to look at carbs, fat, and protein like this. Look at protein as your goal. So let's say the macro calculator says eat 120 grams of protein, right? Your goal is to hit that number as closely as possible. 120 grams of protein, hit that number as closely as possible. Carbs, you want to use as like a ceiling. So 30 grams of carbs, you could don't go over that. You can be 1 gram or 10 grams. You could be below that, and that's good, but don't go over that. So that's like a limit or a ceiling. For fat, you kind of want to use as a lever. So when you're hungry, add more fat, but let's say you're full, don't add more fat just to get more fat in. Like it'll have a number for you, but you don't have to hit that number exactly. Use it as a lever. If you're more hungry, add more fat in. If you're less hungry, push stop, and you don't need to hit that number every day.
That's pretty clear. I like that. Thanks. Now we're slowly wrapping up, and we're coming to the last questions. We have a segment on our show called the Crash and Burn segment. It's as awful as it sounds. It's about your biggest failures. And so my question to you is, what are some of the biggest failures that you didn't expect, and what did you learn from it?
Sure. I'll talk about my divorce, and I've talked about this on my podcast, so like people can go and listen to that if they want to listen to it. Going through a divorce is a big part of your identity. You kind of lose yourself in your identity. For me, I hit rock bottom, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life, right? You can imagine going through 10 years of marriage, being in love, having 2 kids, and then all of a sudden getting divorced was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. But man, that rock bottom moment eventually made me into who I am today. And for that, I'm so grateful, because had I not gone through that, I never would have went to therapy, never would have done life coaching, never would have read the books that I've read. never would have listened to the podcast, never would have started meditating, never would have really discovered who I was and become this authentic version of who I am and embrace vulnerability as a strength and owning my story. And now I can show up the best version of myself to my kids, to my followers, to whoever's in my life. I feel like I'm the best version of myself because of those moments and that rock bottom moment. So that was like one of the failures that really shaped me into who I am, and I'm grateful for.
That's really valuable to hear. And I think definitely something inspiring also to listen to, knowing that, becoming more authentic takes all that self-reflection and all these things, habits that you developed. Another segment that we have that I'm actually genuinely really interested in hearing is about, it's Impact Talks. So it's about your impact. So what is some of the project or one project that you worked on that you feel had the biggest impact?
I would say Fit2Fat2Fit, honestly. Like, I didn't know what it would become, what it is today. But doing that 10 years ago, I had no idea it would become as big as what it is today. And here we are 10 years later, still doing it a second time, but seeing how big of an impact it has on other people. And for me, like, that's huge. But when I started it, I couldn't see this vision that I have now for it, because I was like, oh, this will be a fun experiment. But it's been a huge impact on my life, so many people's lives, and people's lives in the future too.
Maybe a little bit off question then. What are you currently doing or learning that has nothing to do with your business? So something interesting that the viewers might not know.
Man, well, I mean, that's really hard because my life is so intertwined with my business. Like, me gaining weight on purpose has to do with, what I eat. So I'll probably say this, which kind of makes sense. Like, I love ice cream now, which before I did not like ice cream a whole lot. Like, ice cream's okay, but me eating ice cream has become this emotional connection where I know I'm stressed out, and I have this ice cream now that makes me feel good temporarily. It really does. And now I totally understand where people come from when they say they emotionally eat, because I'm like, when I'm going through a painful time, which I am right now, I'm like, that little dopamine hit brings so much pleasure into my life. It's almost worth it. It's almost worth the calories, but it's a temporary thing. So that's one thing. Let me see. That's the hard part. My whole life is intertwined and connected to this Fit2Fat2Fit journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
it's really hard.
Totally
I don't really have
sense.
time for anything else.
Yeah.
I really don't have time for anything else right now.
I have to say, it totally makes sense, because this is pretty much your body, your mental well-being. So it's hard to not do anything else.
Yeah.
A question that I had when I was listening to your last week's podcast, that I really, really wanted to ask at the end is, how can your audience, our audience, me, my team, how can we help you make this journey a little bit easier? Because mentally it's taking a toll on you.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking that question. And, honestly, human connection for me is so therapeutic. So me talking to you, discussing, talking about philosophy, talking about ideas, talking about my business, like, all of that is very helpful and very therapeutic. And like, after this, I'm going to go have lunch with my girls. That for me is very therapeutic. So you guys helping me, sharing where people can go to check out my brand, all of that is very helpful to me. And for that, I'm grateful. So I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a pleasure. It's been a good 2 hours.
Nice. Yeah, it flies. I want to roll out the red carpet for you. What do you have going on? Obviously, we discussed it for 2 hours, what you have going on, but where can people find you? What is there if they want to know more?
The biggest thing is the journey back to fit. It starts January 4th, 2021. I have an app that people can download. They can get access to the app. And if you go to my website, fit2fat2fit.com/back to fit, with the number 2, all the number 2, you can join me on that journey. You'll have access to the meal plans, the recipes, the workouts, the grocery list, all of that stuff, plus all the mental and emotional tools that we have talked about in this journey. You'll see how I implement those in your life and my life, so that we can do this journey together. So I would say go there. On social media, it's all the same: fit, number 2, fat, number 2, fit. So Fit2Fat2Fit.
Yeah, we'll definitely have that in the description. I want to ask, maybe as you start that journey in January, What do you look most forward to and least forward to?
I look most forward to the feeling of being healthy again, like the feeling of health. Like that's the thing I miss the most. What I don't look forward to is in those moments when I know the cravings are going to come, not having that ice cream or that, whatever it is, that treat, not being able to have that. I will miss that for sure because I've become so accustomed to it over the past 3.5 months or so.
Nice. Well, we'll meditate on it, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
I'd loved having you on. It's been a great conversation. Maybe we'll have you back on once you're back in health. It'd be great to check in again. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you on the next one.
Let's do it. Thank you so much.
If you like this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support to any business questions